Just let us know. There it is.
There we go.
How COVID affected the world of sports and the players. My name's James Hetzel.
I'm Tristan Schellinger.
And my name's Shane Murphy. So the three main points that we're going to talk about today, Tristan is going over pro athletes, how pro athletes and organizations were affected and how they were forced to go about COVID. I'm going over high school athletes and how COVID affected them mentally and physically during this pandemic. And then James is going to go over college athletes and the ability of them to get a fifth year that leaded them to play longer than expected. So for high school athletes, I basically just did a quick breakdown here. I kind of wanted to talk about my personal experience, and because COVID kind of happened a year after I graduated high school, and I was in that in between stages of looking at colleges and also playing junior hockey. So I kind of just wanted to talk about that for a bit. Also, I wanted to talk about how players and high school athletes were experiencing a lot of high levels of anxiety and depression during this time. It's obviously because of seniors missing out on their final season of playing sports, and also other just college athletes getting the opportunity to move on and go to the schools that they wanted to go to. I'm also going to talk about how coaches and schools adapted to this change when um, organizations finally let these high school players go back into playing in that fall, of May, of fall, whatever. And we're going to talk about quick about the COVID protocols and how the NCAA and high school um, committees kind of work together to get sports back into play. So just a real quick rundown here. High school closes down, seasons are over. It was around that time of March 24th, 2020, where all the high school, um, basically sports organizations shut down for the time being. It was honestly the whole spring semester, so a lot of sports, including baseball, softball, track and field, volleyball, all those sports that happen in the springtime, were shut down. Um, and then again, like it was the big point of this all was that seniors missed a good chance of going into deep playoff runs and a potential on winning a championship. So just real quick with the numbers here, compared to 2019 fall enrollment to 2020 fall enrollment, there was a huge drop off of students that wanted to attend college for this. There was a 6.6 fall of enrollment, which was over 1 million students. And then compared, like I said, from 2019 enrollment to 2020, there was a 20.7% fewer students uh, being enrolled into colleges. There was a survey done that I researched that over 991 schools, over 150,000 students, and over 5,800 teams that they kind of wanted to see how COVID was affecting their team and how many people were getting COVID. And per 100,000 students, roughly 1,600 cases were happening. Um, there's also another survey with that mental side of it, where 13,000 student athletes um, compared to their previous survey that 30%, 37% higher reported severe anxiety, while 40% reported severe depression. And then another thing that they kind of looked up, these researchers, were that it's kind of obvious, but more sports that were indoor, that were contact sports, were receiving more higher cases of COVID, while sports that were outdoor, that weren't as much contact, with people wearing masks and everything, wasn't happening as much. So this is kind of the one that I wanted to talk about, like my personal experience, and then also just again the seniors like in college getting another year to play, which Tristan and James will both talk about. That a lot of these high school athletes are missing out on like the top schools that they wanted to go to. And Mark Cannon was one of those athletes. He was a top defensive back recruit for Illinois. Um, but yeah, so like I said, I played junior hockey in between high school and college, and the league that I played in was called the EHL, and this league was a place where a lot of players, they weren't looking to go Division One. It was a place where you could play like high-end Division Three hockey in the New England and New York area, And to play junior hockey, you don't even have to be out of high school. It's anywhere from 16 to 21 years old. So you can still be in high school when playing in these leagues. And what happened was that March of 2020, when everything was shut down, our season ended like right at the time it happened. So my personal like experience wasn't affected, but I know a lot of kids with them being 20, 21, still trying to find a place to play, their season ended. And it was honestly sad because I had a lot of friends that were a year older than me that were playing. But for the following year, the EHL opened back up. We were all allowed to play. We just obviously had to follow all those protocols. And there were some leagues with higher end talent that weren't opening up, like the CHL in Canada over there, where they get a lot of NHL draft picks, and the USHL, where they get a lot of Division 1 commits. So all those kids were kind of filtering down, and they were coming into the EHL, where again, like I said, it's only a Division 3 kind of recruiting process there. But then those kids are getting looked at to go to Division 3, and then the kids that wanted to go to Division 3 aren't even getting a place to play. So I mean, it was better competition, and with the schools that watch, you could see the players that really stood out. But then again, there was smaller chances. So it goes in the same thing with high school going into juniors going to college. So another a cool story I guess I found was this girl named Jordan Pansy. She was a softball player. She started playing softball in 7th grade. She obviously fell in love with the sport and wanted to continue her career while playing in college. But obviously, like all these other high school athletes, her season ended in May 2020 as softball is a spring sport. But instead of with a lot of kids, like not kind of doing the extra work and a lot of kids didn't know what was going to happen with high school and if they were going to ever play again. But what Jordan did, what was pretty cool is that taking um, she started making videos of training and really practicing and making phone calls to different schools and researching schools to see which would be the best fit for her when the time comes that she would be able to play. And so one summer league, she was able to um, make the most of her opportunity, and Gettysburg College reached out to her. She went on a visit, and that's where she ended up going to play Division 3 softball. So I guess the main point of this story is that like there's a lot of people that kind of shut down and didn't do anything and kind of were in limbo and didn't know what to do. But Jordan kind of did that extra mile, and it ended up working out for her. So it was pretty cool. But another sad story with COVID, um, which sucks. Like I talked about, a lot of seniors not getting the opportunity to play in the championship game or go on deep playoff runs. This was roughly around the time that every single school in the country was shutting down. But St. Francis was a basketball team out there in California in the Sacramento area, and Sacramento was playing the Pelicans the night before their championship game against Stockton Weston. And they all found out that their game was canceled because some of the NBA players were getting COVID. So they're like, the coach Todd Wolfson of St. Francis was like, no way this is going to happen. But they ended up getting in the vans, going down, and right before they showed up to the arena, they found out that their season was over. So it's kind of sad. Obviously, it's stories like this that you get to that final point, and it all you just never know when it can end. And this was kind of the worst case scenario. So these kids obviously devastated. They ended up finding new interest over there in California. There's stories like throughout this article that kind of brought up that a lot of kids got together and went surfing and just found new ways to keep that team chemistry alive. So the last slide I'm going to talk about here is just how when high school athletes finally kind of got back into the swing of things in that fall season, Safe Sport came out with a policy handbook just for the coaches, the parents, and the athletes, making sure that everyone was kind of following the rules. And I'll just do a quick rundown here with the coaches that basically with kids that were struggling with COVID, even if it wasn't for themselves, um, if it was someone in their family dealing with COVID or whatever the case may be, they were just there making sure that no one was struggling and that they were focused on the task at hand. And then for kids that did get COVID, um, if they were obviously like training too hard, that they were kind of going easier on those kids so they could get back into the swing of things. And then always like a good team in high school will always look up to their coach. So just for the coach to wear his mask or her mask all the time, stay home if sick, and then just finding alternative ways to show support. And then for the parents, I mean, these kids are still in high school, so the parents still have a say in what they do. And just if it was a smart decision for their kids to return to play. And then also just teach them the right ways to go about the sport with wearing the masks and staying away from different people if need be. And then always just checking in on their child and making sure he or she is just mentally and physically okay. And then the athletes, just reaching out if there's if there's anything they needed. There's obviously the parents they can talk to, the coaches, anyone in the school staff, just making sure they're all right during this whole time. And then again, like I said, with St. Francis, the basketball team, just finding new ways to keep chemistry on your team. Like I said, when I was playing junior hockey, we got shut down for a few weeks because a couple of us got COVID. So we took a every other day to just go on Zoom with our team and just talk and make jokes and all that stuff. So a lot of high school athletes and teams were doing that. And then the last one here is just kind of speak up if someone on your team or a coach isn't following the rules. I know it's kind of, you don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but if someone's kind of putting their season at risk, again, you have no idea when your season could end. So if someone is doing something to mess that up, then you kind of want to let them know first before you go out and ruin the whole season. So that's it.
Giving college athletes a fifth year. Um, the fifth year was supposed to be given to athletes who lost that year during COVID, but now it kind of just been given to athletes that were really weren't affected to it for it, and that most athletes are playing longer than 5 years. There's some athletes playing for like 7 to 9 years, jumping around from team to team. This leads fewer true freshmen getting playing time and succeeding in their college careers. And the impact it has only on players to stay another year to earn money through NIL deals instead of moving on to start their professional careers. Some examples of players from football and basketball. Football, Cam McCormick started at Oregon, now playing at Miami at 25 years old, playing in his ninth season. And then basketball, RJ Davis, Mark Sears, Caleb Love, and Johnny Broom, where you have Caleb Love and RJ Davis that used to be teammates at UNC, but now are different teams finishing up their fifth years. Uh, Team rosters are getting older for college teams. For example, Auburn had a older roster at a uh, older roster age than five NBA teams in this past season, especially in the March Madness tournament. Some of the NBA teams were Trailblazers, Hawks, Raptors, Jazz, and Wizards, with their team average being 24. Auburn's roster age in the Sweet 16 was 23 years old, while most college students are graduating at the age of 21, 22, compared to teams like Duke with a roster age of 19. So there's almost a 4 year gap of age difference for teams. Continuation of rosters getting older. According to NCAA data, the average experience level for Division I men's players stood at an average of 2.4 years through years of 2018 through 2019. The last full season untouched by the pandemic, but it has risen to 2.6 years for 2024 and 2025. Yet that data is based on 4 year scale, meaning it doesn't tell a full story on how players in fifth years or beyond would drive that figure even higher. Considering Louisville, Xavier, and Middle Tennessee, the Cardinals, Musketeers, and the Blue Raiders were among the oldest rosters with a combined average experience level of 3.37 years. But each team features roughly half a dozen fifth year players or older in some cases. And updating the data to more precisely capture that pushes their combined average to 3.78 years. The fifth year's impacts. The impacts have been massive. Rules arriving concurrently allowed players to move more freely between schools through transfer portal and cash in on fame through name, image, and likeness, the NIL deals, uh, and blended enticement to stick around college rather than leaving to chase professional careers. That in turn made rosters older, which coaches preferring veteran players, additions to freshmen. Recent examples of how experience wins in March Madness. Fifth years using red shirts and COVID to have longer college careers. Under normal circumstances, NCAA students, athletes have 4 years of eligibility to compete in their choosing sport. Redshirting allows athletes to save one of those years for later use if they meet specific criteria, such as recovering from injury or part of a strategic decision with their coach. The COVID-19 eligibility extension disrupted the structure and allowed athletes competing during the pandemic years to have an additional year of eligibility to compete. This change and created a unique cohort of athletes who could compete for fifth year or even sixth year, depending on their redshirt status. NCAA is trying to implement just adding a fifth year in general, just to make it fair for all athletes coming into the college careers and those that are already in it. And the NCAA AA is looking to change, but there's no timeable for a decision on the topic. So it's still being discussed, probably early 2025. The 2025 academic year marks the final season for players who were granted an extra year of eligibility if they played in college during the 2021 season through COVID. There's also an ongoing legal situation involving Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia and the NCAA over eligibility. Pavia filed a lawsuit in November alleging that NCAA bylaws that limit the number of seasons junior college players can compete at Division I schools and are unlawful and restrict players' ability to earn NIL money.
All right, so I'm just gonna touch back on what Shane was talking about earlier, which is the March Madness being stopped in 2020. So in the spring of 2020, all NCAA sanctioned events were stopped. So that's basketball, College World Series, swimming, golf, tennis championships. A lot of people don't watch those, um, but I mean the world or the college championship for basketball being canceled is just a huge deal, and that affected the players, the staff, students at those colleges, everyone. That's just a massive deal. That's why I wanted to touch on that. And then any collegiate athlete who was affected by COVID was given an extra year of eligibility, as James was talking about, to pursue more athletic and scholastic endeavors. So a lot went on to, continue working on internships or just get a full-time job while in school. And then the drafting of college players. So every draft happened via video conference, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and they set a record number of 55 million views over 3 days, which is 5 times more than the second most watched, which was the NBA draft, which had 8 million, 8.8 million, somewhere around there over the course of 3 days. And all the players that should have been drafted still were, even amidst COVID. So you got Joe Burrow, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball. Those are the three big ones. And then this is a picture of I didn't watch the NFL draft in 2020, but I heard that it was super funny. Some people were using COVID as like, I don't know, just an excuse to make funny bits. So this was Bill Belichick. He just put his dog in his chair, and this was televised nationally to the millions of people watching. So effect on the 2020 season. The MLB spring training had started in February. was halted in March, and they didn't resume until July 22nd, because COVID was super widespread. And almost every major sports league, if it started in the early months, such as the MLB spring training, it was delayed until late June or July, with major safety protocols in place. Professional athletes were required to take a COVID symptom screen prior to any practice or game, as well as frequent testing. And non-player personnel were required to wear masks, and leagues around the world employed strict quarantine protocol. So if there was a hint of COVID, it was like lock it down now. And stadium attendance saw a severe decrease, which I'm going to focus on a lot on the next slide. So obviously took a massive hit. MLB, uh, NFL, NBA, and other countries' leagues played their entire season with no fans. Very few NFL teams allowed fans into games, so Dolphins, Bengals, Jaguars, Broncos, and a few others. But the most people allowed into one stadium rarely exceeded 13,000. There was a few that were 16, 20,000, but that was one or two, and they had way bigger stadiums. Artificial noise and cardboard cutouts of fans were a large part of the 2020 season to help it feel normal. So that's a picture there. Fans would just submit a waist up picture, or sorry, a chest up picture, and these teams would actually just print out paper versions and put them in the chairs to make the players feel a little more normal. And then the mental game. So studies show that COVID-19 came with a massive impact to athletes' mental health. Athletes in solo sports were already more likely to feel isolated before COVID because there's no teamwork, no camaraderie, no sense of a group at all. And then sports can be a stabilizing factor for a lot of young athletes. And having to sit there with uncertainty for a few months wasn't good for their mental health at all. And athletes reported significant increases in anxiety, stress, and depression during the first few months of COVID when it was real bad. So revenue loss, due to the severe lack of fans in the 2020 season, most cases zero. Then you saw a massive decrease in ticket, food and beverage, team merch, sales. And then some teams were forced to put pay cuts and layoffs in place, forcing hardworking individuals to lose their job. So some leagues and teams that lost a lot of people were the Oakland A's. They had to cut 150 employees. Major League Soccer cut 20% of all their full-time staff, which is insane. Um, the NFL had pay cuts, furloughs, which is like that's a temporary suspension until things got back to normal, and reductions in contributions to pensions. But I'm sure with those furloughs, a lot of people went out and found another job somewhere else because they couldn't afford to be jobless for however long COVID was going to last. And global disparities. So travel bans affected international play, obviously, commercial airlines, even private airlines, that's just they were all shut down. Wealthier nations and leagues had adequate resources, so they were able to get back to normalcy sooner than their poorer counterparts. So an example is the Premier League was able to resume in June after investment in safety protocols, while a lot of other lower end leagues, so like U.S. League One, and then the MLS Junior League, are examples. They took way longer to get back to playing. So permanent changes. Um, Even though COVID hasn't affected many people in the last 2 to 3 years like it did in 2020 and 2021, there are long-term changes that have been made to the world of sports and just the world in general. So people are going to be more cautious, especially elderly people, more likely to get it. They know there's another virus out there that they can catch, and a lot of people were vaccinated. But that's I don't know. It's very debatable topic, but I mean, there's still a lot of other viruses that old people can catch. And then we saw ticketless entry and contactless payment become the new normal around the world, really. And that is just an extra hygiene precaution.
All right, and those are our references there. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. Let me see here.